What's going on, bikers? Welcome to the next episode of Tim's Garage. And on this episode, I'm going to be swapping out my front turn signals, as you can see there. These stock front turn signals on my 2018 Triumph Thruxton R with these low profile, super bright LED turn signals that I got from Wilder Factory down in SoCal. The kit for this was $40, $50 shipped to my house. A little pricey, but for the styling that I could find, which was the styling without something actually sticking out, hopefully it's worth it. So I'm going to be replacing these guys, swapping them out, and mounting these new ones right here. So step one is to take a look at what I got in the package. And what I've got, move this stuff out of the way, is I've got the two LED lights. I've got some shrinkable tubing, different size shrinkable tubing, and then the plastic nuts that go on the back of the lights themselves. So the first thing to do here is to take off my headlight and take a look at the wiring harness. As you can see, the wiring comes right out the back here. And see what we have to do as far as splicing. Now, what I'm hoping is that these just plug in super easy with these plugs, but you never know. So let's take the headlight off and get started. All right, so on to the next step here. I've gone ahead and removed the front part of my headlight, which just is just two plugs, one for the main light here, and then one for the LED running lights there. Unplug that comes off, and then I removed the two screws that actually take off this bezel and let it hang down to give exposure to the wiring. Now, here are the connectors that actually connect up the turn signals, to which I've already removed both of them on each side as well. There's only just one screw on the back here that you need to take off, and then the wires for those actually stick out through the inside here, and this is what they look like. So these are the connectors. Now, with this particular turn signal setup, I will actually be reusing this piece of the wiring harness and then plugging them back in there. So what Wilder has done is they've actually supplied the specific connectors. Let me show you guys. These connectors here actually connect into where these wires go in and connect to the back of the bulb housing inside. So what you need to do is actually just pull out this piece of wiring from inside of these long turn signal ears, and you'll be reusing these plugs back inside there and plugging in these little guys on the other end. So I've already taken apart this one, and you can see here the back of the light is those exact same size slip tabs, that one right there, that is these on the back of these wires. So the next step is to actually pull these wires out and through, and then feed them back into the housing, and then reconnecting them, putting the housing back. And then following that, we can install the new turn signals there using that same stock wiring, which is pretty convenient. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to pull these wires carefully through without busting them to be able to reuse them. So that's the next step. All right, so I've got my wiring harness pulled out of the turn signals and reconnected. And what I'm going to have to do is feed these back through and then run them through here to the brackets to then obviously plug in the lights. But before I do that, one thing this Wilder kit requires is you need to actually drill this hole out here a little bit larger to have this plastic piece fit. As you can see, it's a little wide, won't go in there unless you drill that out. So I'm going to grab a bit and just widen up this hole just a tiny bit, enough to get this plastic screw that's on the back of the turn signal to fit through. But before I put it in, I'm going to take a Q-tip with some paint and clean up the edge to make sure it's painted so that way this bracket doesn't rust. So drill out the hole and put the new one through, connect it, and then I'm going to test to make sure that I have the correct signals going in the right direction from the harness. Okay, so the new low profile turn signal is in place. Now that the paint dried on that hole, I was able to wiggle it in and then throw the nut that came with the kit on the back here to tighten it down. The nut and the turn signal itself are plastic, so you got to be sure when you're tightening it down not to over tighten it, but just enough so it's snug. and it doesn't move, so that's looking really good. And I've obviously pulled the 2 wires through. So the next step, which I've already gotten to jump on, is sliding the heat shrinkable tubing. So the kit comes with this big piece, which I slid up all the way up into the headlight bezel over the existing stock wiring, and then these 2 smaller pieces. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make the connection between the new turn signal and the wires here. Slide the smaller pieces of tubing all the way back down, shrink those up around the connection, and then slide the big piece all the way down and then shrink that up over the entire thing. So it's actually kind of like a double insulated connection that's made. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now that I know that this is the right side connection for this turn signal. So I'm gonna go ahead and shore up that wiring on this side. And real quick, before I actually seal up these connections, it's always good to just to double check to make sure that you've got the right turn signal connected to the right wiring. And I've got the right turn signal on, and the right turn signal is flashing. And obviously this is flashing fast right now. So one of the things that you do is you go in and program the flashers to be at the correct speed once this is all done. So I'll do that at the end. Okay, the small wires have been heat shrunk, and you know, I just used a lighter for this carefully, just waving it back and forth to get those to shrink up, just watching them shrink and not melt, but shrink into place. So those are ready to go now to slide the big piece all the way up to here and shrink that guy up. All right, so I've got the wires all shrink wrapped and looking good, looking clean behind the headlight housing on both sides. I tried to take the tubing and actually slide it over the plastic nut that's right here, and then shrinking it to that so that way it's not going to come off or anything like that. And then what I did is I just pulled the wires so they're, you know, semi-tight into the headlight housing, so there wasn't slack hanging behind, but that did leave a bunch of extra slack inside of the housing. Now, they did plan for that. They gave us some handy dandy zip ties to get all this cleaned up and tied together. So I'm going to get this cleaned up with those zip ties, reassemble the headlight, and then we're going to see what it looks like here, and hopefully we'll call this thing done. Well, would you look at that? That is slick. Done. Looking beautiful. All set and ready to go. By the way, I did swap out my headlight here, guys, for an LED one. 6000K, super bright white light. Got rid of that halogen, so now I've got my LED headlight. LED turn signals in the front. And the tail tidy in the back. Wow, this looks fantastic. What do you guys think of the LED lights? You know, some people might say, oh, might be a little hard to see the bike. Hopefully at night, you know, that is bright enough. They are pretty low profile. I mean, the stock ones sticking out so far do serve a purpose so that you can be easily seen. So I think it's just something to, you know, be cautious about while riding. Just make sure that you are being seen when riding. But that is a good look. Nice and clean. Love those lines. Nothing sticking out now. Ultra low profile. We'll call this project done.